What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talk of the Tundra, the Green Bay Packers podcast, a proud partner of the Blue Wire family and the Eurostep Podcast Network. If you're watching the YouTube, Jordan does show off his merch of the shirt I am wearing under my sweatshirt, so we're twinsies today. But we're coming at you back with another episode, fresh off of the news that most of us had seen as a foregone conclusion, but also just refreshing to hear. Aaron Rodgers joined his good friends Pat McAfee and AJ Hawk on the Pat McAfee Show this afternoon on the 15th of March, also known as the Ides of March, and announced that he made his decision that he wanted to play in the NFL for another season last Friday, and that team would be, drumroll, the New York Jets and not the Green Bay Packers. He talked about it in depth for all of 45 minutes and then some on the Pat McAfee Show, and I'm going to leave the floor open here to my co-host, Jordan Tresky. Welcome, by the way. Go ahead. Let's back up. Who's been pining for this news to happen since the day the season ended? Clock tick zero on the Lions game. He walks off the field with Randall Cobb, talks to the media. Jordan Tresky's waiting for this news to drop and for the Aaron Rodgers to come to a conclusion. Aaron Rodgers era to come to a conclusion in Green Bay. So Jordan, it's all you, buddy. Go for it.
Because when you're a jet all the way, baby. Aaron is going to New York. Numac doesn't know this, but I made this joke at the end of Win in 6 to pay off for the start of Tots. So therefore, these podcast episodes are connected. You're welcome. Yeah, the inevitable was made inevitable. I don't know how to describe today, other than I don't know. My emotion in all of this business has completely, besides just wanting change because it's it's time. My emotion has been, it's not like Favre. I wasn't at the time of the Favre situation. I was 16 years old. He was my first, player that I really admired. This is gonna all sound age like fucking milk. I really, really liked Brett Favre, and for all the things that he brought to the Packers, I just thought he was a great guy.
Wow.
Because he's a family guy, all that stuff. He's an upstanding citizen of his state and of the USA. But at the time, you're a teenager, and football was my favorite sport. Packers were my favorite team. All this stuff, and it felt like at the time, okay, this is a hard decision being made. But Brett Favre just showed, hey, you still got something left in the tank, and all the things that ensued 15 years ago. Now, I think there are a lot of parallels, of course. The fact that Aaron Rodgers will be going to the same team that Brett Favre went to after playing or starting with the Packers for 15 years. Of course, another parallel. There's so many parallels with all this stuff. I have said, will continue to say, and say again now, this season and just the way things ended and all this stuff, we arrived at a place where it felt more than okay that if the Packers wanted to make a change, whether with Jordan Love, which was the most obvious one, or just completely scrap the board together, which didn't feel like a realistic option at all. I feel like, I don't want to speak for everyone here, but I was very much welcoming this and just felt like this is the most optimal time to move on, because you have not making the playoffs is hitting bottom for the Green Bay Packers. That is it. It's not getting the first pick in the draft and having to suffer all the losing. It is missing the playoffs. This team is their sights are set on buying playoff berths, and obviously, considering their tradition and all this stuff, it's playing for a lot more than that. So for me, just the nature of this season, you kind of just saw this is not going to get any better. If anything, it's going to get worse. Yes, Aaron Rodgers is a very talented quarterback. I still believe he has something left to give. He's going to be giving that to the New York Jets. ETA, when is that all going to be arranged? We will talk a lot more about that. But I think just watching him on Pat McAfee for the final time, because I will not be watching again. Um, I just saw the finality of everything, and I think I was more than okay with it. I think, and I, not to speak for Aaron Rodgers because he hates when people do that. I would assume that he feels the same.
Right.
Numac.
Um, Watching the interview today, I've kind of felt a lot of weight lift off my shoulders because I put way too much stock into this team as a fan that is definitely healthy. But I think it was just nice knowing that we have a next step, and that for all intents and purposes, Rodgers will not be playing in Green Bay again. Like, I'd be very, very, very shocked if it happened, if that happened, because he started off his interview with Pat McAfee saying 90-10, I'm probably going to retire. He started, and when he went into the darkness retreat, which we talk about the darkness retreat with jokes and everything else, but it seemingly had quite the impact on him.
To that, there's even more to unwrap with that, where he originally went into this year planning this trip and thinking, "Hey, we're a Super Bowl bound team. We can, if we accomplish that goal, then I have more reason to kind of let go of my career and move on and all this stuff." That obviously did not go to plan,
Right.
but still, that trip and the significance of what it is, as much as I will make fun of it and just
Yeah,
all
I
this
have
stuff.
jokes for it too, but in the context of this conversation about Rodgers and about his future, it definitely had a significant weight to his decision.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, he talked about 90-10. He was ready to retire and was comfortable with retiring, going into the darkness and during it. And then when he came out, he had seen that the Packers were kind of shopping him around a little bit, and that kind of swayed him into thinking, okay, maybe I do have some more left, and kind of maybe had some spite out for the Packers, just not being transparent. We'll get into all that later and things like that. But um, it just felt nice to get out of the news reports and the sources of everything that's been happening since basically last time we recorded last week, Wednesday. And I, I guess personally, I'm a little frustrated that Rodgers knew on Friday, and seemingly everybody else did. Like the Packers and Jets seemingly probably knew on Friday that he was wanting to go to the Jets, and that like it just didn't leak anywhere, which that's fine. I'm not really concerned about that. I'm just more concerned that I spent Saturday, Sunday, fine, and then all of Monday, Tuesday, somewhat like, okay, when's the other boot going to drop? Like, if it makes sense for them to make this deal right now during the tampering time of free agency, it makes sense for both sides to do so because the Jets need a quarterback, Packers need cap space to spend to fix their holes. It's just that seems like it would be the case, and so I guess getting a quote unquote decision on the McAfee show was nice to know that we understand with a high likelihood what's coming down the line for the Packers this season, and that's Jordan Love starting at quarterback for the Green Bay Packers and Rodgers and friends start playing football in New York because I think if the Packers just don't budge on whatever lowball offer I'm assuming the Jets are trying to give them, um, I would assume that Rodgers would rather just retire. I don't think he plays another snap in green and gold again, and that was pretty evident that was his feelings as well today in the interview.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is good to have the insight that you have because this is not a Packers or bust situation. It felt it matter where he looked at it, whether it was a positive, uh, I guess, talks after the end of the season and all this stuff. It was very much retirement or play elsewhere.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so that's where it's like, I think I will give him props. I think he spoke as crystal clear about the
Mm-hmm.
situation that he's in,
Yeah.
which is not easy for people to do, especially as proud as someone like he is,
Hmm.
and rightly so. He's a very accomplished NFL player.
Right.
Um, I I do, of course, have some bones to pick, but I think they're very small in the grand scheme of things. I just think the overall sentiment of like, I did my time, you know, I respected everybody that I played for, the employees, the city, blah, 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 blah. Like, and those are all genuine feelings. I'm not
Right.
trying to dismiss them.
Yeah.
I do think it's like, you can't just say all those things and like, just let me go. It's like, well, because you signed this contract.
Yeah. I.
And the Packers offered you that contract. And if we're being honest, I know we talk about it as this kind of millstone around their neck, especially as you're talking about trade discussions.
Yeah.
Now, if you're really thinking about it, this is the only way that they could have any leverage of getting something for Aaron Rodgers
Yeah.
if things went south as they have.
Yeah. I think that. Well, I'm not gonna get into like Pat McAfee and sort of his interview topics throughout because I don't think he did a great job, but I also don't feel like litigating it because it's not worth our time. But the one thing that I want to talk about is that he said multiple times that he thinks the Packers don't have leverage in the situation, which I disagree with entirely. Like the Packers have Aaron Rodgers, they have him under contract. They do not need to trade him. Like they can eat the contract and not tank their next couple of years, but it in essence would. But they don't need to trade him. Like, and if Rodgers doesn't want to retire, doesn't want to play, they can just not pay him. Like that's the worst case scenario of this entire thing. I don't think that happens, but the Packers have all the leverage. Like Rodgers said flat out, I want to play for the Jets. So yesterday's price was not today's price, Woody Johnson. Like you're gonna have to pay up, and we'll get into compensation packages later. Um, but to get back to your point about like loving Green Bay and putting his time in and talking about all the people that he's loved over the years, just community members, business owners, all this stuff. As a Green Bay native, I thought that something that was actually really cool, despite like my contempt for Green Bay, was that given the small nature of the city, its communal aspect, and just how tight knit that community up there is, I found it really cool that when Rodgers was trying to talk about reasons why other players might want to leave Green Bay, and he kind of had like that whole, well, it's too cold, and he couldn't think of another reason that he would want to say of why he'd want to leave Green Bay, because he loved the city, and like that's just cool from a native and fan standpoint. That despite all these hard feelings he's had over the past 3 years between drafting Jordan Love, not communicating over the years of free agent targets they should get or people to bring in through a trade, that despite all these bad feelings that he's had towards the franchise, that he's always just loved his time in Green Bay. Like this is different from Favre, to where there's angst and there's animosity
Yeah,
towards one another, where the Packers are
that was a clean break. This
right.
is like both sides know things have to change
Yeah. And
permanently.
right, like the Packers are frustrated with Brett Favre that they kept stringing him along, and he's like, I don't want to retire, I want to retire, back and forth. So they, I guess, got sick of it and shipped him to New York. That was messy, and the fans understood that. I lived like blocks from Brett Favre's house. There were people in the street saying they want him back. Like
Yeah.
the fans now understand that it's kind of come to an end, which is fine. And I think it's pretty clear that the Packers have a spot in their heart for Aaron Rodgers and always will, and he'll get the same treatment as Brett Favre did when he retires and gets his number retired and the whole, pardon the pun, the whole 9 yards. I think it's just refreshing to not have like the real animosity come out during this interview, and he kind of just showed his love for the franchise in the city. If the Packers kind of drag their feet on trading him, I think that might get there, but I would hope that wouldn't happen. But I also hope that they get what they're due for him if they trade him, because he's worth more than some of the trade packages I've seen going around.
Also, to kind of, I guess we don't need to close the loop on this parallel, but again, the Favre Rodgers of looking in the mirror and becoming the same person. We can going through that situation informs how things have played out now,
Hmm.
where things are just, you kind of accept things for what they are. And when it comes to starting quarterbacks for a team for a very long time, there are things that you just kind of like, that's it. This happened with Patriots Tom Brady. You accepted things for what they were, and then when someone wants to change, and it's not like that, from my perspective, my Midwest bird's eye view of Foxborough, yeah, there were little things that added over time, but it wasn't like this like oh my like massive hysteria where like that's what it felt with Barr.
Hmm.
Barr was just this thing of like he was so intertwined to the Packers being good again
Yeah.
that it was like you could not fathom him being on another team or the significance of him playing for another team. Rodgers, based on having going through that and the fact that like you see a succession plan in place and all this stuff, and yeah, it may not go out well, but like
Right.
I, we have talked about this ad nauseum, but I just wanted to throw that out there as
No,
well.
I definitely get it. Like I said, aforementioned Green Bay native, my like childhood home until I was 6, 7 years old was the last house on the block. If you guys are up, if people, if listeners are from there, behind Kmart before Lambeau Field. Like my family parked cars, paid for our taxes, and went on family vacations with the cars we parked because of Brett Favre and his and revival renaissance of the franchise. Like I've talked to many old business owners who talked about how if Brett Favre didn't come to the Packers and revitalize the team, that there's no way that so many businesses would have been able to thrive. Because believe it or not, the Packers brought people to Green Bay, brought community and business and just people to spend money and make economy that much better around the stadium. It's a weird transition to make to talk about football, but that was the reality. And I think that that was where a lot of the emotions came from with that too. Is just that this was in large part a savior to Green Bay. Brett Favre was, and to go from that because of how bad the Packers were in the 80s and the late 70s, it was tough. And so to see that kind of hope of a 15-year quarterback leave probably hurt. But now it's been closer to 30 years now. I think it'll be 30 next year since Favre came. Um, it's a little more stability, right? Like the franchise is in a good place, the Green Bay economy is in a good place. To where this panic of a Hall of Fame quarterback leaving doesn't matter. Like the NFL is much larger than it was in the '90s, and there's stability in the Titletown district and things like that. So I'm happy that it isn't breaking like Favre did, and I really do think that. But to go back to 5 minutes ago on the Pat McAfee stuff and the leverage. I was going to talk about AJ Hawk because AJ Hawk posed a really good question to Rodgers, and I want to applaud him. If you're listening out there, AJ, great job today. Um, that he asked Rodgers that if he came out of his darkness retreat and to the hundreds of texts and to all the emails he had, if the Packers had texted him and said, "Hey, we really want you back. Like we want you as a quarterback. We want you starting next year," would you have said yes? Let's go do it. Let's play. And he said he doesn't think so. He said he wouldn't have been gung ho about returning. Essentially, that's not a quote, but that's what I have in my notes. That he wouldn't have been as eager to return to Green Bay as he was about going into retirement, going into the retreat. And so I think that kind of just puts it into perspective of where Rodgers' head was at coming out of the season. And I think that writing was written in Sharpie on the wall. That he kind of felt it from the team internally, whether it was um, being presented that way from the team after the season. But I think it was just like, okay, we lost Devontae this season or last season, and we almost lost you as well through retirement or just not wanting to play. Like that was the last ride this past 2022 season, and I think Rodgers himself understood that as well as the franchise did.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was very illuminating to hear him say that if the shoe was on the other foot and they would have welcomed him back, which they were putting out publicly at the time,
Mm-hmm.
for another season. he wouldn't have been so receptive. So it's like that's as we talked about throughout this whole saga, it's a matter of one side making that hard choice.
Mhm.
And the Packers took it upon themselves to make that hard choice.
Yeah.
And they're probably doing that based on what they felt like Rodgers was doing, where it's like, okay, we got to move on because we may want him to come back and he retires. So then we're forced to move on when we don't feel like there's no,
Yeah.
it ends up in the same result.
Right. Um, for all that he said during the interview, there was some veiled shots at the Packers, like little needles of things that I think slighted Rodgers between just not between the Packers like shopping Rodgers essentially during his retreat and when wasn't able to look at his phone or anything like that, and a couple other things that they talked about. I was just like, oh, just he's upset. I think at the process. I don't think he's like again. I don't think he has animosity. I just think he's Aaron Rodgers. He's particular about a lot of these things. He talked about really valuing transparency, which again is we'll leave it alone because the whole like immunized thing, which was really funny by the way. Super duper aside. At the end of the interview, I don't know if you watched this far when
No.
when they talked about uh, Rodgers meeting Woody Johnson, and there's like I think it was a bunch. It was Pat McAfee and like the crowd in the McAfee show asked if the Jets organization like Woody Johnson, Robert Saleh, Nathaniel Hackett, and everybody who was there with Rodgers, if they all did ayahuasca, like just joking with them. He goes, "You guys do ayahuasca? Oh, did you guys get vaxxed?" He goes, "Nope, we didn't do ayahuasca. We didn't do that either." And someone from the crowd of the McAfee show, like their supplemental people, said, "Oh, so you're not big on Woody Johnson then either." And that was like the funniest thing. Just like just not a big fan of Woody Johnson, the heir to the Johnson and Johnson,
Yeah.
uh, what empire of medicine. So that was a fun little aside.
Uh,
Um, I guess packages have been talked a lot today, and it's been talked about ad nauseum since we kind of knew this was happening. I think we talked about a little bit last week, right? Like our ideal trade packages. I saw more people today saying like a third and a conditional third next year for Rodgers, and man, oh man, that'd be bad. Like,
yeah.
I don't think it's a really interesting like thought experiment to do. Is are we as a fan base willing to tank short term feelings if Rodgers wants to play in New York for like just having this not losing a player for his less than value. That being like, meaning, is Brian Gutekunst ready to face the backlash of not trading Aaron Rodgers for a third round pick and a conditional third pick next year? Because he knows Aaron Rodgers is more valuable than that, to make sure that they don't get like swindled essentially. Like, because I think in a similar vein to Favre, Rodgers would be pissed this season if he didn't get traded to New York. But I think like as time goes on, those scars would heal, and he'd have the same thing that happened to Favre. They'd have a nice reunion, his number to be retired, all this, etc. Like, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I personally, I'm willing to for that to happen. Like, it'd be really, 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 really frustrating for that to happen. But I think getting crap picks for an MVP level player or a player who thinks he's at an MVP level still is not good business for the Packers just to get off his contract.
So my caveat slash devil's advocate here: if you do not, if you get an equivalent of those level of picks, value picks, I would assume that means that you are putting on the Jets to eat that money, eat a lot of the money that he's owed in his contract
Mm-hmm.
without restructures and all that stuff that's, I'm sure, being
Right.
uh, talked back and forth about. So it's not like there's that's part of where that's the entire um hang up at this point is that it's
Right.
over compensation. It's over who's going to eat most of that money because of
Hmm.
the basis of the contract. And again, as we talked about after the fact of Derek Carr going to the Saints. We've seen the first few days of free agency, and any
Jimmy G going to the
quarterback,
Raiders.
Jimmy G going to the Raiders, he's certainly a starter and going to start for them. Um, Sam Darnold going to the, I mean, he would have gone back to the Jets, but I mean, just any quarterback,
Right.
they are signing elsewhere. They don't really have backup option
Yeah,
here.
they have Zach Wilson, which isn't really an option if they want to
Yeah, and
compete. If
they're
they want to compete.
and Mike White signed with the Dolphins
Right.
too, obviously. So that's where it's like,
That's where
well,
the
it's
Packers
not
have
a
leverage. Like I don't know where the leverage
yes,
thing came from. The Packers don't have it. The Packers have all the leverage. It's like, okay, Jets, you spent this money on Lazard. You spent this money on like trade assets on like, getting that safety from Baltimore, whose name is escaping me. But like the Jets have done the Packers thing where they restructure all these contracts in order to make cap space.
yeah.
And if they did all that to not get Rodgers, that's fine that they did it. It doesn't really affect anything. But they still did all of this to still have Zach Wilson as a quarterback, which is not ideal.
Can you? This is actually a funny um again, not to keep bringing up this parallel. Can you guess what the Packers got for Favre
It was like a
when they
second and a
traded for him?
fourth, wasn't it?
It was a conditional fourth round pick with performance escalation.
Just the pick, like just
Just
that
the
pick.
pick. I'm
Yeah,
gonna I'm that was from his Wikipedia. I'm gonna go to Football Reference because that seems a lot more reputable. But
I think it might be a little different. Like I'm not trying to
yes, oh
move
of
the
course.
goalposts at this point because I think there's a lot more certainty with Rodgers playing at least this year than there was with Favre playing, and I think the Packers were ready just to be sick of the headache, right? With Favre, I think the Packers are willing to ride this out with Rodgers if need be. But I don't know. I think at this point in their careers, Rodgers is a much better quarterback than Favre was. So, like even though the last season of Favre they made the NFC Championship game and yeah, NFC Championship game and lost on that interception, I still think that a lot of other factors came in as to why they wanted to give up a fourth round pick for him. I think that Rodgers has more potential than he did with the Jets and the Vikings. Rodgers has more potential than Favre did with the Jets and the Vikings, essentially. So, that being said, I'd be willing to eat, I don't want to say, probably up to like 30% of salary um, to get a good draft package to stabilize our future versus having to pay none of his salary and getting like a conditional fourth or a conditional third.
Sorry, I'm just reading details as you're explaining all this. It was originally a fourth round draft pick that I believe turned into a second rounder because he played in more than 70% of the plays. And if
Right.
they qualified for the playoffs, which they did not, but I think just the percentage of plays. Anyway, continue. Carry on.
Right. Like I think that's just my feelings is that I'm willing to shift my expectations of what I want in return for Aaron Rodgers depending on how much the Packers eat. If the Packers eat like none of the deal, I could be swayed into thinking that like a second and a second next year, a conditional second next year is fine because you get off $60 million in his entire contract. Like you just your cap is refreshed. Um,
Also, Elijah Moore just became a lot more expendable with a certain wide receiver
right,
that left Green Bay to sign with New York.
right. And so if they eat none of it, then yeah, I can be talking to that. But if the Packers eat like anything of this contract, I really think it's a first for sure, and pie in the sky, conditional first next year, conditional second next year, things like that. Like I put in the Discord sidebar GSPN.info links there to join the Discord. My big like pipe dream, just pie into the sky um, request for the Rodgers deal, and it was the Jets get Rodgers, and then this was after the news of Jerry Jeudy being available from Denver, because Denver came out and said, "Hey, all all of our wide receivers that we think Russell Wilson can throw to are just available. Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, KJ Hamler, Tim Patrick, all were ready to go." And so um, I'm vamping as I'm trying to scroll back infinitely to try and find my proposed deal. But it was basically the Jets get Rodgers. Oh, I found it. So the Jets get Rodgers. The Packers get 13 overall, which is the Jets pick, 44th overall, which is the Jets second round pick, and the Jets 2024 third round pick, along with Jerry Jeudy. The Jets get Aaron Rodgers. Broncos get the Jets 2024 second, Packers 2023 third, and Packers 2024 third. Not really a big deal anymore because the Broncos said that like the asking price for Jerry Jeudy is at least a first. So that plan goes out the window. But the point being is that like if the Packers can extract value out of Aaron Rodgers' contract, they absolutely should, which is what I think Goody's trying to do. Like he's not
Yes.
just going to be like, okay, first deal, no negotiations. Yep, have him. Like that's it. He's 17 games removed from an MVP level season, and Rodgers said today that he went through his workouts last week, and he felt like kind of that dog again to where he can still play. And the biggest motivator of Aaron Rodgers his entire career has been spite, and I think that there's enough of it where he could have a good season next year. Will I be sad? Absolutely not. Like I think regardless of how Rodgers plays next year, that I'm fine moving off of Rodgers. He could go win a Super Bowl. Would it sting? It'd sting. But I'd be happy for him because am I just like Aaron Rodgers as a player. He's like what Brett Favre was for you. I was on like my front bookend of consciousness as a football fan in 2007. And so like I shouldn't say 2007, it was like 2004-ish time. My first actual Packers memory is 4th and 22. Like that's where my Packers fandom begins. But I didn't get into it like super hard, obviously, until Rodgers really was the quarterback. He's my Packers quarterback of my life. It's just who he is. And so I'll always appreciate Rodgers for what he's done and all the success and fun that he's brought to my life as a Packers fan, while at the same time wishing that he does just fine anywhere else. Like I've been trying to make that shift in mindset as a fan for a while when it comes to any sort of player, whether it be like Prince Fielder with the Brewers, um, the Bucks when before Giannis signed his extension. Like I was gonna root for Giannis forever because he's such a great human and great player that he deserves to be cheered for wherever he goes. Um, and just if he has a great year next year and rifles off another MVP, 50 to 50 touchdowns, no interceptions, and has a fantastic year, I told us so. Like that's fine. Rodgers can turn around and say I told us so. And so it's
Yeah.
I'm not concerned. I just really want from a Packers fan standpoint to get the best return possible for the talent that Rodgers is.
Yeah. I think that is exactly where I'm at. It's not about what he could do with the Jets. It's about setting up the team that you follow and how they run the organization.
Right.
That is most of all. It's just more of like this is the ultimate reset. How many times do you get to? It's not really stripping down it to the studs or anything like that, but like when someone is so singular in the organization and in Rodgers' case has garnered a lot of sway and say, things kind of just go back to its natural order. And I think that in itself is going to be refreshing again, that
Yeah.
like we're not going to have to go into every offseason, hopefully, wondering who the starting quarterback of the Packers is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No.
It's just the merry-go-round of like, how does he feel this week?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing.
And part of the reason that I really wanted to get the best package out of out of Aaron Rodgers and like out of the Jets, is to set up Jordan Love for these next 2 years to see what he really is made of, and I think that's meaningful. The part of the reason I wanted to go get Jerry Jeudy from the Broncos is that he has this year left on his contract, and then he has a fifth year option to be picked up next year. So he's down the timeline 1 year from. He's on the same timeline as Jordan Love. They were drafted the same year because they both have the same structured deal.
Yeah.
And I think it really is a great thing to do is to give Jordan Love as many weapons as he possibly can for the next 2 seasons so the Packers can accurately grade just how good of a quarterback Jordan Love is. And a wide receiving core of Christian Watson, Jerry Jeudy, and Romeo Dobbs to go with XYZ tight ends and fourth string receivers to go with, and Aaron Jones for that matter, is a great way to figure out how much talent he really has and if he can be the next great Packers quarterback of the last 3 decades. Like that's a big burden to put on Jordan Love's shoulders, but that's the future we're looking at, right? That's the future we wanted to decide is Jordan Love the third straight Packers QB to go on a 15-year tear and bring a title back to Lambeau?
No, yeah, it's no easy feat if he
No,
could pull it off.
absolutely not. And I don't think that like a title is even really necessary. Like, of course, we want a title. We want to win all the Lombardi trophies we want. But to have a 15-year sustained run that Favre and Rodgers have had, I'd be just as happy. Like, it would suck year in year out to lose, but it would mean no more dreary years like the Browns or dreary years like the Panthers or any of these teams that sort of go through peaks and valleys of competing or non-competing and then resetting. Like they'd have a stable rock like they've had for the past decade and a half or 2 decades.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, part of why this is the ultimate fan of you is that you see someone like Jordan Love be selected and have it come under very controversial circumstances and all the path that is it starts from that point and it ends here. But no one, at least I wouldn't think so. No one goes into it thinking that like, hey, I'm just glad that they have him so they light a fire under Rodgers' ass. Like I do believe that is part of why they did it, but it's also
Yeah.
there as we are seeing at free agency. If you're betting on, a bona fide, sure thing starting quarterback that is going to lead you to playoff prominence and contend for Super Bowls and stuff like that, the Tom Brady's, Rodgers himself, he never tested free agency. He said that on the McAfee show today. He never tested free agency. It wasn't even a thought process in his mind.
Right.
Tom Brady and all those it's the anomaly in this whole thing. And you eventually want to see Jordan Love and see what he has to do. He may not play well. It may not go well, or like it could be just a season like we had before, or
Right.
this year, I should say. And I rather know rather than just the unknown.
Yeah, I think knowing is this so much better. Like I would hate to like I don't want to say worst case. That seems a bit dramatic. But having Jordan Love become a Jimmy G for the Packers like he was for the Patriots isn't the way to go about this. Like I'd rather just know of what sort of quarterback we drafted rather than dangle it as a shiny new toy to other teams to get draft picks for. Like I think the
Yeah.
Patriots only got like a second round pick for Jordan or for Jimmy G.
Garoppolo.
Yeah. And so I think it's just more fun as a fan to see these things develop and to see how this goes. And hey, to be frank, us Packers fans have been blessed. Like you ask a lot of fan bases, they'd take the 30 years the Packers have had over the 30 years the Browns have had. Or the 30 years that I'm trying to think of another destitute organization. The Lions. No offense to any Lions fans out there. But winning is fun.
The Jets.
Winning is fun. The Jets. Like I was listening to a Don LaGreca rant on Twitter yesterday, and one of his co-hosts, I think it was Peter, said that Rodgers' down year last year would have ranked top 5 in all-time Jets quarterbacking seasons. Like, and that's a down Rodgers year. And so I think that's what I don't get from the Jets' point of view and from like other fans' point of view is that if you have an opportunity to get a quarterback like Rodgers, you give up the farm to do it because it immediately puts you into contention, even if he's not like peak Rodgers, because the Jets
Yeah,
have such a good base already. They have a really good defense. They're cheap. They have a really good offense with the young weapons. Like they are in a place to contend if they have a quarterback. And Rodgers is that quarterback if he can just be who he was this year. Frankly, like that's really all it is.
yeah,
Because now looking at it, he already has his safety blanket in Alan Lazard, and then he has two, maybe one, depending on what happens with Elijah Moore if he comes. Again, really would hope he would, but likely not. You have Alan Lazard, Corey Davis, Garrett Wilson, and Elijah Moore. That is a solid four receivers to go with. One of this year's offensive rookie of the year candidates, Brees Hall. Like they have a good team. They just need the frickin' quarterback, and that's where the disconnect in my brain isn't thinking of how this is even possible that they're at a stalemate with the Packers. The Jets are, because contending is right there. It's right there. They won 7 games this year with Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, and Mike White at quarterback. Throw in future Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers, who's leaps and bounds and miles better at throwing the ball than all three of those quarterbacks combined. And they'd likely be contenders. It's really that simple. It's a tough division, no doubt, but make the playoffs and see what happens. Like, because again, they're good, and they're good and they're cheap. Like Rodgers would be pretty much all of their cap space, but they don't. They can compete for a year or two and not really lose a lot of their pieces. It's
yeah.
they're in a great spot. They just need the quarterback, which is why I don't fucking get why they aren't just shelling out the picks. I just don't get it.
I don't know. I mean, they kept bringing up the Stafford deal as a comparable, but it's like
Them
that
being
was pretty.
McAfee and the rest of
Yes. Um, this is just basically breaking down Pat McAfee's talk with Aaron Rodgers.
well, that was the news, right? Like,
Yeah, that is true. Um, but it's like there was still a willingness from both sides to be like, this is what we're gonna. This is, and that was an even more heftier price to pay up for,
right?
especially considering that the Lions have like a top 3 pick or whatever it is, top 5.
Yeah,
So yeah, I don't know. It's that part of it, and just where how this whole thing plays out. I think everybody is certainly interested in the time element of it. I'm not so much, because it's like what's done is done. Like Rodgers himself said that everything is in place. It's just a matter of confirming the particulars, and the particulars is totally financial and draft pick related. So it's like, again, I think you said it before. I am more than fine to just be like, take a seat back,
ride it
and
out.
I'll see what is going on with Jordan Love, or if it's draft night and there's still no deal, I will welcome all the new Packers that will be drafted and all that stuff. So it's
Yeah,
like, I don't know. I am not worried about this being done, or I should say, I'm not worried about this being done like super fast. I'm just like, okay, here we go. Let's just
yeah.
see how it unfolds.
This day in general is just a welcome feeling for the sole purpose that we know. Like there's really only two options left, and neither one of them involve Rodgers playing quarterback for the Packers.
Yes,
Um, I'd be surprised if he doesn't get dealt before draft night. I
I would be too, but
Is it likely? No. Is it possible? Of course. But um, yeah, they just don't. The Jets need a quarterback, and I don't know if they want to draft one at 13. There isn't going to be one there likely. And do you really want to put a rookie quarterback on that roster? I don't think you do. So
just did though
it's
with
a
Zach
whole thing,
Wilson.
and I'm just really interested in seeing how Jordan Love can really benefit from this new look Packers. Not new look, but he gets a chance to lead the team. And for everything that we've heard from Devondre Campbell, from Dale Levitt, not sure,
Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones, Brian Gutekunst out the floor, like everybody, they really believe in Jordan Love, which is good. You should believe in your teammates. But when Devondre Campbell says it with a like local TV station in Green Bay on a Tuesday night randomly, I think that speaks a lot to sort of his talent, ability, and leadership. And I'm excited. I'm excited to not stress over OTAs this year because like I wanted Rodgers to go to OTAs last year so because he could work with new receivers. I think Jordan Love's going to be there. I think he's going to be there for all of these programs for the next few years to really work on his craft and gain the chemistry that he needs to gain with his teammates, which is exciting. It's just exciting for that as a fan to be excited about. Weird, it's exciting to be excited about something, but you get my point. That it's just like there's no. Never mind. Never mind. I'm done. If you had something else to say, not done.
No, I think that is the current state. And again, it, there's almost a weight of the world just being lifted off the shoulders of like
Yeah.
there's no it's not all being said behind closed doors or like what's being fed out to reporters and all this stuff. But it's like you just accept it for what it is and you move on. That's just it's part of life.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like it. Whatever happens between now and Rodgers gets traded is not really consequential to me because if he gets like when he gets traded again, I'm 99% sure this happens. Then the deal's done and we get to move on. And if it's hopefully it's for something really good, like but if it's for something that's less than we talked about this package already, we won't go there. But like it's just nice to know that we really have two ends in sight. Either he retires, doesn't play for the Packers again, or he goes to the Jets and doesn't play for the Packers again. Which again, stinks. Packers legend, Super Bowl MVP. It's just that way. But the unknowing of what his decision was is over. It's just like
Yeah.
I'm not waiting on every Adam Schefter tweet. I'm not waiting on every Ian Rappaport interview. I'm not waiting on every Rob Dombrowski ESPN article. We're just here, which is a better place than we were 24 hours ago. Hell, even 8 hours ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah.
So that was 45 minutes on Aaron Rodgers. Do you want to talk some other free agents for the Packers? See what they've done?
Are you telling me there were other things that happened with the Green Bay Packers in the last 3 to 5 days?
You're goddamn right, Jordan. They signed long snapper Matthew Orzik to a 3-year deal.
Oh, Zick. Oh, Zick.
Oh, that came out today. That's obviously jokes. That's obviously not the only news that happened. But yeah, they signed a long snapper to a 3-year deal, which Jordan and I talked pre-pod that this is probably almost entirely a result of the circumstance the Packers are in and is not having the current cap space. And so, whatever, the guy signed a long snapper. Welcome to the team, Matt or Matthew, however you go by. Maybe Thew. I've seen that tweet a couple times. I'm refusing to go by Matthew or Matt. I'm going by Thew now.
Ugh, that is disgusting.
Right. So it's probably
No.
gonna happen. But regardless, welcome to the team. A couple more of like the big things that happened since we recorded last. Dave Bakhtiari restructured his contract, converted $5.5 million of his salary this year, plus his $9.5 million roster bonus into a signing bonus, which cleared $7.5 million of cap. So they're getting there. And same thing with Devondre Campbell. They converted $285,000 of his 2023 salary plus a $3 million signing bonus, adding a void year to clear about $2.5 million for Green Bay as well. So they've really done all they can do to clear cap space. That's it. Like that's the end of the line essentially.
Without releasing someone outright.
Correct. Any contract they wanted to rework to gain cap space back is now done. They've exhausted their options, and rightfully so. They did everything they needed to do besides Rodgers, obviously.
Yeah.
To be able to sign some more players in free agency right now. The big news, the big signing Oh, I'm so happy. I'm gonna be mad right now. I'm so happy. I'm so happy. The Packers signed All-Pro kick returner Keyshawn Nixon to a 1-year, $4 million contract, up to two. I'm sorry, up to $6 million, with bonuses. So just super duper 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 happy to have not to worry about kick returning as it stands right now for the Packers in 2023. It's just great. Nice to see a guy earn his keep after performing super well and staying with the team. So I'm ecstatic.
I was certainly surprised. This came off the heels of a very cryptic Instagram post. I shouldn't say cryptic because there's a picture of that Keyshawn Nixon posted of himself, splashing deuces to the
Yeah.
Lambeau crowd as he was going into the tunnel. I would presume the last game of the season.
Yep.
So it was very much like, oh, he's gone, isn't he?
I was so
Um,
nervous. I was like, he's either saying that he got signed or that like kind of giving a hint, or he's peacing out. And I was very nervous for
yeah.
that latter option.
Um, but he said, what was the final number they sent it? I know there's like incentives and all that stuff.
The contract itself is 1 year, $4 million, but up to six with
Yeah.
bonuses. So $2 million available in bonus.
Which is not, that's not insignificant for essentially a specialist.
Right. I think they work him into the
Yeah.
rotation as a corner probably more, but I think he has value. I think he has $4 million of value, um, with this team, given that
I would assume, I would agree.
there
Yes.
wasn't a lot of times that ball was short of the
No.
25. And
No.
as you go into a unproven quarterback like Jordan Love, or assume we go there again, operating under the idea that this is likely where this is headed. Jordan Love would love room, right, to work and not be backed up 25, 15, 10-yard line, on kickoffs if possible. So Keyshawn Nixon adds a very, very, very valuable, asset to this team, and just ability to give Jordan Love some more space to work.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The other big news coming out of free agency, we'll talk about Alan Lazard now. We touched on it earlier. 4 years, $44 million from the New York Jets. They were seemingly the only team to be talking to Alan Lazard, which is probably a part of the Rodgers saga. I thought it was really, really interesting that he didn't get any sort of interest from the Bears. Like, I thought the Bears would have thrown a bag at him, frankly.
Well, they
And
were throwing a lot of bags,
they certainly threw some bags. It was a
mostly all defensive side, not to turn into a Bears podcast.
right, no, like, and that it's something. The point being that they traded for DJ Moore through the pick that the Bears traded away the first round pick for the Panthers pick, the second round pick, DJ Moore, and some stuff. And yeah, DJ Moore is wide receiver one in Chicago now. But given that Alan Lazard has a pretty specific skill set, and that he's a great receiver, I shouldn't say great, given you guys know my feelings on him. He's a good receiver, not great, better than average receiver, but really actually great at blocking outside. And I think that has a lot of value. I forget who said it. I saw it in a tweet, that a bunch of coaches talked about how they want Alan Lazard on their team for that purpose. They want receivers like Alan Lazard, and I think he would have had a lot of value for the Bears, but they didn't want to throw any part of that $100 million in cap space towards Alan Lazard. So yeah, 4 years, $44 million, $11 million annually. I think it's a good deal for him.
I think so too. I believe the biggest free agent wide receiver sighting so far. Juju Smith-Schuster, I don't think got to that,
He did
but
not
he
get
was
to
kind of
that. He
like
got to like
the biggest.
33.
Yeah.
I think same same amount of money per year, but not the years and total amount.
Oh yeah. Yes.
I forget who signed Juju. Was it the Patriots?
Patriots.
3 years, $25 million. So not quite $11 million a year. in one short of a year. So yeah, I think he is the. I'm trying to see. Oh, the Giants released Kenny Galladay. I'm not sure if that was reported before. I just saw that on the transaction page on Spotrac. Jacoby Myers was the other one. He signed.
Oh yes, Las Vegas,
He signed with the Raiders. Um,
the team
trying
that he threw a touchdown to last
that
year.
I saw a tweet where it said the lateral was an inside job, and I just about lost it. I really wish I could find how much he had, but 3 years, $33 million. So I had him and Juju mixed up. So Jacoby Myers gets Alan Lazard money per year, but one less year. So, which I think is fair. I think that's about fine. I
Yeah.
think Lazard had a better quarterback than Jacoby Myers did, so that helps too. Also, Michael Thomas got re-signed by the Saints.
Yes.
He still exists, dear listener, believe it or not.
Yeah. Yes, he does.
Despite all contrary evidence of him not existing for the Saints anymore, he still does play football. So, trying to think. Oh, Dron Reed went back
Back
to
to
the Seahawks.
Seattle.
That one kind of bummed me. That was a bummer.
Yeah.
I liked his season last year, as up and down as it was. But it's just kind of the game. If they didn't want, if Dron Reed didn't want to come back, maybe he didn't like his playing time, maybe he didn't like that they weren't going to compete, et cetera, that's fine. But back to the Seahawks, which is very helpful for them in their D line.
Yeah.
But gives way to my large adult son, Devontae Wyatt. Should get playing time next year. Should get a lot of playing time next year with Dean Lowry and Dron Reed gone. And Slayton will be in there too.
That is true. Yes.
So that's good. Big fan. Big fan. Trying to see who else. The Packers re-signed Tyler Davis, which is a decision. Maybe he gets more playing time without Big Dog, who is reported to go to the Jets. Again, this is like Rodgers' friends, essentially, as part of that deal. No Bobby Tunyon news yet, which is peculiar. I wonder where he lands. He will land somewhere. That is a certainty. But I wonder where he goes. If like the Packers are bringing back Tyler Davis, they are obviously still have Josiah DeGuara, and are probably going to be targeting tight end in the draft. So I think it's kind of a pencil on the wall writing that Bobby Tunyon's probably not coming back, considering they re-signed Tyler Davis.
Yeah. Weird one. He was a restricted free agent too.
Yep.
And we'll get into another restricted free agent shortly. But yeah, just kind of you need some kind of stopgap in terms of the tight end room, because Mercedes certainly looks gone, and DeGuara's not quite at Tunyon.
Yeah.
It's all a big shrug right now.
Big shrug emoji. So, we'll get to Yash in a second. I saw a report today that Chris Barnes is not returning. I don't know if he got picked up by anybody or if he said something to where he just wasn't getting
Tendered.
Yeah, tendered. Yeah, they did not tender Chris Barnes, which means that he's walking.
He's a free agent. Yep.
Sucks it didn't turn out. Didn't have the best year after being hurt. So all of that put together, just not in the cards for him to return to the Packers. So I'm sure he'll go somewhere, make a camp team, and see if he can work his way into a spot on a 53-man roster. But we'll see. Yash. Packers place a second-round tender on Yash Nineman, which means they, I think it's like $4 million.
Something, yeah, 4 point.
1 year, $4.3 million. So another team can either, I think it's give him a contract, like an actual contract, same way it does in the NBA. Give him a contract, the Packers can choose to do it
to match
it, or they can get a second-round pick from that team.
Yep.
So otherwise, they just keep him for a year at $4.3 million if no team wants to give him a contract. So I frankly am a fan. Like it's cheap for a right tackle for 1 year essentially, and a young right tackle at that. And if it doesn't work out, a second round pick is great this year for the Packers, depending on who it comes from. But like I'm all for a second round pick to come to the Packers instead of Josh Nijman. Move Zach Tom out to right tackle, and then just start your future O line. But yeah, we'll see. Packers could take a lineman in the draft too, and then move Tom to center. There's a whole bunch of options happening right now to where it's big we'll see energy.
Yeah, that there's a lot of irons in the fire.
There is. That's a great way to put it. Um, yeah, I would, I don't really have strong feelings on Yash. Like if he stays, he stays. If he goes, he goes. It's 1 year kind of thing. Like
Yeah, but
if you
it's
want,
like
go ahead.
put in these terms, it's like, okay, so you're essentially, you might, if he does end up leaving, or someone matches his contract, blah, 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 you know what I mean?
Yeah,
If he ends up leaving, you do kind of feel that short term loss and the lack of lineman depth.
yeah,
But knowing that you would get compensated for it is kind of a silver bullet in your chamber, I guess.
yeah.
On
Silver
the other
lining.
hand,
Silver lining.
silver lining, yeah, why did
I don't
silver
know why you're
bullet?
trying to shoot vampires, but
They keep sucking the blood out of people. Um, but yeah, I don't know. He is certainly promising. He has promising tools and everything like that.
hmm
It's just a matter of, you know, and now too, like, what is Yash Nyman? What is any of the linemen that are, not to the level of Bakhtiari or Elton Jenkins, even Zach Thomas, he still has to work his way up. What does that look like behind Jordan Love now? Not Aaron Rodgers.
right. No, that's definitely a significant question to ask.
Yeah.
And I think it's definitely wary. Like, yeah, that your depth kind of takes a hit if you lose Yash. But at the same time, I'm not super concerned. Like, you can move Tom over there. You have a solid five, which is good. But all linemen get hurt. They're in the trenches. They take a beating. And so if you lose one, you start to become last year's Cowboys or last year's Bucks, where it's really just parsing together any sort of big
Yeah.
dude to play the line, and that leads to a lot of variance in how each game can go because they're pros. They're not all pros. They're not above average players. They're backups for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes because if it is a second, that'd be pretty awesome. But at the same time, I'm fine with him staying as well. Anything else, Jordan? Anything else you want to touch on? Any other Aaron Rodgers thoughts? We can circle back if you have anything. But I don't think I've got too much else.
No, I think we kind of just summed up the state of the Rodgers talks. I think we're all at peace with the decision
Mm-hmm.
from both sides.
Right.
Now we have this other layer of what do you get for him, and I do think there's going to be a sense of rejuvenation of like there is going to be something fun about tracking another young quarterback's
Yeah.
development, and frankly too, we have not really heard from Jordan Love. He's been there a little bit, like when he had to step in for Rodgers when he's been hurt and stuff like that, but like he's not been as much as he has been a face for this franchise already.
Mm-hmm.
He's not been like, hey, out or like at the podium every single day of like being asked about game plan, opponents, his thoughts on the offense, everything like that. So it's like I think that is also going to be fun to like kind of just learn his personality and everything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think it'll be fun to learn, like you said, just kind of get to know Jordan Love, the player through interviews, through press conferences and things like that, and sort of get his time in the limelight. He only had that one athletic article that came out like right towards the end of the season where he talked was like, yeah, I want to play. I want to be the Packers quarterback. I want to play quarterback. I want a chance to prove myself as an NFL quarterback. And I think that was the initial beginning of the writing of the sentence on the wall that Rodgers was probably done. yeah, you're right. We haven't really heard from him outside of sort of random interviews and just preseason talk. So yeah, I totally agree with you that while this train could go off the tracks a bit and end with the Packers being bad, I think these next 2 years really could be fun and just getting to know Jordan Love as a player and not as much as a person. Don't want to put any parasocial relationships in there, but as we learned with Rodgers, like it's fun to hear these guys talk and act um, as with as much bravado as they do when they play well. Like for as many headaches as Rodgers gave us in the latter part of his Packers career, with with COVID and the drama and all the other stuff, run the table and RELAX was fun in the moment. It really was. Like they're kind of memed on now because of how many times he tried to do it again, but the run the table part and the
I
relax.
like our chances.
Yeah, that wasn't as fun
No, it was like,
as
oh,
relax or run the table.
half-hearted.
Like it was fun, and I think there's more opportunities for this to happen, and just see him play. So I'm excited. I really am. Um, Looking at free agents available, like we said, Kenny Galladay was just turned loose. I would throw like the smallest vet min bag at Kenny Galladay for like a training camp deal.
You'd think he's got something.
Gotta have something, right? He was so good in Detroit, and then got that big bag, and obviously got
And who
released.
was
But
throwing? I guess
yeah,
Stafford was throwing to him
Stafford
like
and
that.
Daniel Jones. But I don't know. Like I'd throw a non-guaranteed, like small 1 year bag at Kenny Galladay to see if he can prove it in camp. If he can't, cut it. Not a big deal, and go for it. But yeah, there's definitely still a lot of premium free agents out there. Like we won't sign them, but Jadeveon Clowney, Adrian Amos is still there. Devin McCourty's still. Oh, he retired. McCourty
Yeah, he does.
retired, right?
Yes.
Yeah, as I thought.
I got a question.
Yes.
Let's do a little rapid fire.
Bam, bam,
Biggest surprise so far in free agency. This could be a signing or a trade.
bam. Biggest signing, I think. I'm really not. I wasn't really surprised at anything. Oh,
And you're exempt.
while they're getting traded to the Giants was
I was
significant.
okay. Yeah.
While they're getting traded to the Giants was pretty significant, given that they just spent money and stuff on Jimmy G. But I'm not sure what I meant to say. But there's more to that than just trading Darren Waller. Did you see that or no?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that being that Josh McDaniels leaked Darren Waller and it's Kelsey Plum, right? Plum.
Plum. Yeah.
Kelsey Plum getting married last weekend, and it wasn't publicized. Wasn't for public consumption, and Josh McDaniels leaked it at the combine, and then subsequently traded away. Like I don't think, given last year's results for Darren Waller and how he sort of meshed into that offense when he was healthy, had Josh McDaniels and Darren Waller's good graces in the first place, and him leaking his marriage essentially. My guess is that Waller probably asked out. Was like, hey, get me the hell out of here. I don't want to play for him. I don't like him. Just make me leave. But yeah, I think it's
And
interesting.
to tie it around with Packers,
Oh, this is so stupid.
yes.
Go ahead.
So Waller gets traded to the Giants for a third round pick and some other filler. Tom Silverstein of the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel / Green Bay Press Gazette reported that the Packers offered a second round pick to the Raiders for
At the
Waller at the deadline. So not even just wanting him in a Devontae package, which I don't think was legal by the CBA,
Yeah.
but then wanting him again for the trade deadline and getting rebuffed. Yeah, that's not good business.
That's
That's
not
not
good
good
business
business.
at all.
No.
Like if I was the Raiders, I went back to the Packers. Hey, what do you like? What is? And the Packers correspondent around again. Hey, Raiders, last season's price is not today's price.
Yeah.
Is Waller your
That's
biggest surprise? I have a second biggest surprise now that I look at it.
Waller just because I guess it's repurposing what the Raiders cap is and everything like that, but like
Yeah,
jeez. I'm sorry, Devontae.
it's. I
Um
think he'll be fine with Jimmy G, and they still have Hunter Renfro, and Foster
and
Moreau
Jacobs.
is pretty good. He's like their other
Foster Moreau is a 18th century author
That
that lives in a lighthouse.
close enough.
Um,
His great grandfather David Thoreau would probably love that
Actually,
joke.
I think I have a more, well, it's equally surprising as Waller. I just thought of it.
Okay, go ahead.
Whatever the hell is going on with Eagles and Darius Slay.
Yeah, like I said it in the Discord that in Discord or wherever I said it that the Eagles are slowly tumbling into like fringe contender status and not like bona fide contender status. They lost a lot of parts of that defense, like um Darius Slay now, uh Edwards going to Chicago, Hargrave going to, I
49ers?
think that's right. And like luckily they drafted Jordan Davis last year to replace him, but man, that defense was really really good and now they're losing a lot of parts of it. It's getting,
There's still the ability for them to draft well, and they've obviously drafted well.
yeah, they have a top pick this year.
But yeah, it is that's that's not insignificant.
No, it's
And
not.
yeah, I don't know.
They have the number 10 pick. They have the number 10 pick in the draft this year thanks to the thanks to the Saints, which was the CJ Gardner Johnson trade. Um yeah, the offense will carry them just fine. They signed David Monk. Nope, he went to the Lions. They signed. Why am I?
Rashad Penny.
Yeah, they signed Rashad Penny, who when healthy was very good. And Miles Sanders signed with the Panthers. So I think they upgraded at running back with Penny to Sanders, or Sanders to Penny rather. That offense will be just fine. They'll like Jason Kelsey's coming back as center. The offense will be okay. That's not the issue. The issue is that they were really good and they were a contender because their defense was outstanding. I
Yeah,
think they led the league in turnovers last year,
yes, it
and
did.
so I think they'll be just fine. They'll probably top the NFC East again. But man, oh man, that's
I don't know.
three significant bodies already gone.
Yeah,
And we'll see. Like
yeah.
it's big we'll see energy, but losing those guys hurts for them.
Do
Pun
we
intended.
do we want to talk about NFC North teams, the Vikings, check in on them. Vikings, Bears,
Was
Lions.
really surprised the Vikings cut Adam Thielen. Like hometown boy, kind of lost a step last year. Like I get why they cut him. I didn't think it'd come to that kind of thing. I don't know what your thoughts on it are, but I didn't think they'd end up cutting Thielen. I think they kind of just write out that contract, but I was wrong.
They've had some weird moves. There's talk of Dalvin Cook possibly being traded.
Which I think wouldn't be a terrible idea. Alexander Madison is good.
He is very good. Um, the Bears shelled out a lot of money. Tremont Edwards from Buffalo.
Yep.
Why am I
And
blanking?
Edwards
TJ
from,
Edwards.
he was
Yep,
the Philly guy.
yep. I think got a couple of linemen. Some guy from Tennessee. This would be like, I just saw your name on Twitter. I'm already forgetting it 2 days later. Um, Lions. Dave Montgomery's really interesting. Moving on from Jamal Williams.
Then Jamal signed with the Saints.
Yeah,
So
that's an interesting bet there.
the Saints or Montgomery.
Montgomery with the Lions.
I think it's interesting. I think he's definitely good.
Feels very repetitive with Swift though.
Yeah, I think it's more interesting that they do that, given knowing that they have Swift. Like I think that says a lot about their confidence with him, which is unfortunate. Whatever, say what you will. Um, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Vikings today signed Madison to a 2-year, $7 million deal, so they could very well just cut or trade Dalvin Cook.
Yep.
I don't think they'll cut him because it already the what's the word, year already started. Like I think that
Oh yeah.
time has passed of reasonably wanting to cut him. But yeah, they signed Nick Mullins, the old backup, to a 2-year deal.
Marcus Davenport.
Yep, Marcus Davenport to a 1-year, $13 million deal. Like I think that's fine. They They released Eric Kendricks, which is interesting. They cleared $9.5 million off of him.
Yeah, I
That
and
happened.
that
That
defense is
happened
not that great
what,
to begin with.
or a week ago, but yeah, not great to begin with. And he was like the leader. He was the captain, and
He was a thorn in the Packers side, I'll tell you that much.
yeah, he was. And just interesting moves. Interesting moves. And
Yeah.
it's not to say they're not good moves, because I think like that their GM and coach are a good pairing. Like they competed this year. I think they have a good process in mind. They probably know more than we do. It's just interesting.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see. They re-signed their center to shore up that line, Garrett Bradbury, who was like hurt all year last year. So hopefully that he can stay healthy. Hopefully for him, not for Packers purposes, but hopefully he can rebound after being hurt all last year. They signed Josh Oliver, which I don't think I know who that is. A tight end to a $21 million deal. He was a Jaguars tight end. It's a lot of money for a tight end I've frankly never heard of. Which, like, whatever. There's guys that I'm not going to hear about.
Let me be frank.
But you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
tight end is a top heavy position. And $7 million a year is a lot for a guy that played behind, what's his
Mark
name?
Andrews.
Nope, he was played for the Jaguars, not the Ravens.
Oh, Jaguars. Evan Ingram.
Evan Ingram, right. Like, it's, I don't know. Maybe I just didn't watch enough
I
Jaguars
see Mark
football last year,
Andrews.
which, like, I'm not going to take any.
I'm not gonna blame you for
I'm not
not
going to take
doing
any
it.
flack from any listeners for me not watching Jaguars football last year. So, yeah, I think the NFC North is in a very interesting spot. I think there's a lot of opinions on the rest of the North from just Packers fans and what the Vikings are doing. I think the Lions are trending towards still being good. Like, I really do. I said last year when we first started the podcast that the Lions are building towards a good team. And I think they're doing a lot to shore up that defense. I really do.
Mhm.
So,
Also forgot to mention that we have not podcasted since the Bears traded the first overall
yeah.
pick.
What?
So that
It
so that
worries
is
me. That's smart football.
it's smart football. DJ Moore, pretty good receiver, not so great quarterbacks throwing to him. Interesting to add to the interesting uh, title of the NFC North. A lot of interesting bets being made by every team, frankly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, it worries me as a Packers fan that that the Bears are doing the smart things, right? Like it's it's worrisome. Trading off of that number one overall pick is good. They have Justin Fields. They believe Justin Fields. They got Justin Fields a receiver to go with like their new quarterback, or not new, their young quarterback, so that he has somebody to throw to. So it's worrying that they're doing such good things. They got a haul for that pick, and we'll see. I did love this stat though, because I think it tells you just how piss poor the Bears have been in the receiving part of their franchise for their entirety of their franchise. DJ Moore in his career, 80 games, 364 receptions, 5,201 yards. Listeners, let me introduce you to the top receiver in the Chicago Bears history. Their history. His name is Johnny Morris. He played from 1958 to 1967. Had 356 receptions. So 8 fewer than DJ Moore has in 5 years of football, and has 559 yards. If DJ Moore played all 5 of his first 5 years with the Bears, he'd be their leading wide receiver of all time.
That's their leading all or receiver of all time.
Yep.
That's a joke,
Alshon
right?
Jeffrey is the only one within the past decade
Wow.
that is top 5. It goes Johnny Morris, a man named Harlan Hill, Alshon Jeffrey, and then Walter Payton, and then Mike Ditka. Like Dude, they have a receiver now, and we'll
Uh,
see how it goes. But I think it's really, really, really funny that 5 years of a receiver they just picked up in a trade, all of his stats would lead their entire franchise, which has been around since
19.
1920. 1920. World War One had just ended, and the Chicago Bears like, we got to find a receiver, and then they kept on this track for 103 years until they finally found one.
Um,
So, alrighty, I think that just about
yeah,
wraps
that's a
up
good
our
note.
episode on a little bit of Bears jest and making fun of. So, thank you everybody for listening. A couple of promos. As always, go join Repod. This will be a great episode to discuss with everybody over there about the Rodgers trade, about the future of the Packers, about Jordan Love, about all the things Green Bay Packers coming down the pipeline the next six months essentially. No, not six, 5. No, about 6. 6 was just September. So go over there, Repod, talk about Tundra, Eurostep 1 and 6. Great place to have a communal chat about all things Wisconsin sports and any other podcasts you'll listen to. So yeah, go check it out. We'd really appreciate it. GSPN wise, a lot of good podcasts coming out this week. In addition to this one, first and foremost, we'll go chronologically backwards. Mr. Jordan Tresky just finished recording before this one a new 1 and 6 episode. So Jordan, want to tell the people about what that 1 and 6 episode's all about?
We talk about how good the Milwaukee Bucks are.
Spoiler alert, they're good.
They're very good. They just won 50 games and counting. First team to clinch playoff spot for this year. Yeah, we just talked about like just the nature where we are at with 13 games left in the regular season as we're recording this, and just the fun that they bring.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Packers are a lot of fun. Bucks are a lot of fun. Packers will soon be a lot of fun.
They will soon be a lot of
Soon
fun.
be, but the Bucks currently, whole bunch of fun. Shout out Brooke Lopez for putting number 41 in his place.
Trey Lyles, you lost your Canadian cool.
If I ever am on the other side of a Brooke Lopez grabbing a man by the scruff, I deserve it. Frankly.
Yeah.
Like I saw that, like obviously Trey Lyles had him by the throat, but Brooke Lopez grabbing a man by the scruff of his neck, most emasculating thing I've seen in the past year. Just wonderful
Hands are
content.
huge.
Yeah. But then after the win that the Bucks had on Tuesday night against the Phoenix Suns, Ty and Rohan recorded an episode of Eurostep talking about, again, just how good the Bucks are, and just giving a brief overview of Giannis's MVP case and things like that. Ty also recorded an episode of Eurostep with Matt Moore talking about just that, the Jokic, Embiid, Giannis MVP race. So go check out the Bucks feed. It's always full of a bunch of great episodes from the boys on GSPN. Brewerside, spring training is coming to a close quite soon, but the World Baseball Classic is in full swing. Jordan, do you like the third pun of the podcast?
The what?
The third pun. I'm going all puns.
Oh my
Baseball Classic in
God.
full swing. Love loves things. We're going full bore. Adam and Andrew talked Brewers on Cruising for a Bruising. They talked, obviously, the decisions they need to make with roster cuts, essentially, as it comes to nailing down that roster for opening day. They also talked, just like I said, the World Baseball Classic, as it's 8:41 p.m. Central Standard Time in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. About 20 minutes, the U.S. is facing off against Colombia to make the quarterfinals of the WBC. So they talked all of the good things and all the Brewers performing well, including sultry Sal Frelick for Italy. So go check it out. Cruising for Bruising. Bunch of great content ahead of the Brewer season starting in 2 short weeks. Last, but most certainly not least, go check out Make Time for This. The Oscars were this past Sunday. There was no punches thrown. There was no, I didn't watch, but there was no, what I assume was racy jokes. It was just a good time with a bunch of wholesome people such as Brandon Fraser earning Oscars. So, again, Andrew and Adam, went through that on Make Time for This, previewing and predicting. You can go check out their predictions on the 95th Academy Awards, as well as just their long, long catalog of anything movies, TV, pop culture, including the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Ant-Man, or if you're a sports person, and like you probably are, you can talk or listen to them talk about Full Swing, which is Netflix's Drive to Survive version of golf. So I watched the first episode. I thought it was pretty neat. Listened to that episode. Thought it was pretty neat too. So I suggest you as well. And as always, go check out gspn.info for all things GSPN, including if you want to come to a meetup. We are having a meetup on April 4th between the hours of like 6-ish and 10:30, 11. Andrew is coming up from the south, the deep south where he resides. And Adam is making the trip across the pond to visit, go to a bunch of games, and we're all coming together as a network and wanting to hang out with all of you listeners. So there is a form there. If you'd like to go fill it out. If you're 100% on coming, if you're not 100%, you don't got to fill it out because we're just trying to get a gauge of how many people we want at the venue we're trying to book. But if you do want the information, it's all in there for you to learn about and show up if you'd like to. Mr. Tresky, did I miss anything?
No, that covered all the bases. World Baseball Classic.
And with that, thank you all for listening. Really appreciate it. Like, share, retweet the pod. Follow me at Numac is known on Twitter. Follow Jordan at Jordan Tresky on Twitter. Join the Discord, as we mentioned. And again, thank you for listening. Jordan, thank you, buddy.
Thank you. Go Pod Go.